let's turn to some absolutely insane, outrageous, disgusting comments made by a Republican congressman. This is Michigan Representative Tim Walberg speaking to his constituents about what he would like to see done in Gaza. Let's take a listen.
Are we spending our money to build a port for them?
Yeah, it's Joe Biden's reason. We need to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. I don't think we should. I don't think any of our aid that goes to Israel to support our greatest ally, arguably maybe in the world, to defeat Hamas and Iran and Russia, and probably North Korea's in there and China too, with them and helping Hamas. We shouldn't be spending a dime on humanitarian aid. I agree. It should be like Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
It should be like Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Get it over quick. Calling directly for nuking Gaza and turning it into like Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Now, the truth of the matter is already enough bombs have been exploded in Gaza to be the equivalent of more than 2 of the equivalent Nagasaki or Hiroshima style nukes. But to see a congressman speaking to his constituents and say that directly and think that that's acceptable to say, I mean, talk about genocidal. This is insane. Now, Saagar, he got some pushback in the local press and, you know, tried to quote unquote soften these. Oh, it was a metaphor. A metaphor for what? Complete annihilation? And I can't help but notice, you'll recall, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib was censured in the House for retweeting something that said free Palestine from the river to the sea. This was national media coverage. You guys probably remember. Every Democrat got asked about these comments. We had a whole national conversation about this rally chant, etc., when she's calling for equal rights for Palestinians and Israelis. This man suggests nuking the place and crickets, effectively, from the mainstream media. Will he be censured by the House? Of course not.
By the way,
of course not.
Krystal, the full quote is actually even more deranged because it doesn't just call for wiping out people in Gaza. He says, get it over quick. The same should be in Ukraine. Defeat Putin quick. Instead of 80% of our funding for Ukraine being used for humanitarian purposes, it should be 80 to 100% to wipe out Russian forces if that's what we want to do. So he also wants us to use nuclear weapons and give them to the Ukrainians to wipe out the Russians without thinking then of any of the attendant consequences, just to give people an idea of how psychotic this individual is. Did you want to hear his defense?
Outrageous.
It's pretty good too.
Yeah, and let me just reflect on that for, I mean, listen, at least when you're talking about the Russians, at least you're talking about military
like
combatants.
A peer-to-peer nation. That's a good point.
You know, in Gaza, you're talking about 2.1 million people, out of whom 30,000 were Hamas, right? And you're talking about nuking the place and, you know, wiping them out. There is no other word for this than, you know, a call for genocide. So that's the sort of thing that he thinks can just fly at a constituent town hall. I'm very curious whether anyone there said anything, what the reaction was in the crowd, because the clip cuts off right there. But it's the level of dehumanization that has become normalized in certain circles is just, it's honestly beyond belief.
I would say, Krystal, I actually think the tide is turning. And I think that in the beginning, I mean, we see a lot of this in polling. You can see a lot, the whole like, get it over with, get it over quick. Like I said, September 12th, 2001, what's everybody saying? Nuke Afghanistan. Well, you know, now it's been, what? It's been almost 6 months since October 7th. Public opinion has turned dramatically. The Palestinian cause is a lot more sympathetic. People have watched the Israeli military campaign. There's not a lot of plausible deniability, you know, at this point. So I actually think that things are turning against us. Now, I don't know where this was apparently in Dundee, Michigan, that this happened. But I also think it is noteworthy that he actually did have to walk it back. So he says, he said, as a child who grew up in the Cold War era, the last thing I would advocate for would be the use of nuclear weapons. He says, I used a metaphor to convey the need for both Israel and Ukraine to win their wars as swiftly as possible without putting American troops in in harm's way. And I think what I mean, obviously it was clear what he was calling for.
Yeah.
But, I mean, recall, what was it, Brian Mast and those people says there's no such thing as an innocent child in Gaza. Recall some of these other Republican congressmen who 3-4 months ago, they were receiving no pushback, or even, frankly, even a lot of media coverage outside of independent circles. This one, I mean, this got written up in the New York Times, in the Detroit Free Press. Michigan is obviously a state with a lot of Arab American voters. I don't know anything about Dundee. I don't know if it's going to, hurt his electoral chances or not. But I do think it was at least somewhat noteworthy to me that they were, or at least he felt the need to issue some sort of quote unquote clarification, even though it's a BS clarification. And what he said is crazy, like on every level.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a good point that at least now he feels some shame. He's forced to feel a little bit of shame around this and receive a little bit of pushback, at least in the local press in particular. There's some other political news we wanted to bring to you, which is Senator Fetterman, who has become the greatest cheerleader for Israel, doing whatever the hell they want to do in the Gaza Strip and seeming to show absolutely no care and concern for the fate of Palestinian civilians. He is suffering a mass exodus at this point of communication staffers in particular. I can put this up on the screen. Top staffers for Democrat John Fetterman are leaving his office for more progressive jobs as the Pennsylvania senator moves more to the center, they say. I don't know if I'd call it the center, but anyway, on key issues, Joe Calvello, Fetterman's longtime communications director, who helped him navigate a tumultuous Senate race working on the campaign, left to work with liberal Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson earlier this month. Quote from him, he says, "Mayor Johnson is a true progressive who is committed to fighting for the working people and families of the city of Chicago. I'm deeply honored to join his administration." We also have Nick Gavio, Fetterman's deputy communications director, who started with his campaign, is going to head to the Working Families Party. And we have one more individual who is Emma Mustian, I'm sorry, Emma, who served in Fetterman's office, who is going to work on the other Pennsylvania senator's campaign, Senator Bob Casey's re-election bid. You can read into this. I think probably a lot of it has to do with his just devotion to Israel, his willingness to, he is way to the right of Biden rhetorically.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
In terms of what he supports, and he's criticized Biden. He was doing this whole song and dance about, like, how can you criticize Biden on Israel? Then you're just helping Trump. But then when it came to Biden even rhetorically shifting with regard to Israel, he felt perfectly comfortable to attack him then. And apparently when he does it from the right, it's not, quote unquote, helping Trump.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't even.
You didn't pick up on that?
No,
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
But, I think the big question with Fetterman, we had Ryan Grimm's reporting about how he originally sort of staked out this position on Israel. Very much looked like, from Ryan's reporting, that he hadn't really thought that much about the issue.
Yeah.
And then in his campaign, when he was faced with a primary challenge in that Senate campaign against Conor Lamb, it was more of like a centrist figure, and Fetterman at that point was the more of the progressive figure. He just effectively asked Democratic Majority for Israel, like, what should my position be? They literally wrote it up for them, and he has sort of stuck with it ever since. And, he's taken a lot of money from AIPAC. I'm sure that provides a hefty incentive to stay lockstep in support. But I think at this point, given the fact that he's not just doing the sort of like standard issue Democratic support of Israel, that he's so vocal about it, so vociferous about it, it has to go beyond the money for him. Like, I think he has become completely ideologically locked into this position beyond any sort of reasonable understanding of the way money may have influenced him and the way that this may impact him electorally, et cetera. Because I could very much see him, next time he has to face re-election, which granted is a number of years from now, but I could see him facing a challenge from the left that could be quite potent. He is definitely risking his career with being such an overt cheerleader for the horrors that are unfolding. So, for these staffers, apparently it just became too much to watch this man whose whole political brand, I know now he wants to run away from the progressive label. He was not running away from the progressive label. When he was running, he was Medicare for all. He was originally a Bernie Sanders supporter. He was talking about lifting wages, supporting unions, et cetera. That was his positioning. And specifically his brand as a former Rust Belt town mayor was, I'm the one who's going to look after the forgotten people, to then have zero sense of the humanity of Palestinian civilians. I think for these staffers, it probably just became too much to bear, and it's no accident that they're all going to, places that are more progressive and in a different place when it comes to Israel-Gaza.
For me, I think it's just clear, and these two things, something we try and tell people all the time. Guys, people in the office, they're actually not that smart. If you watch this show, or if you even read any other show, or in general, you're probably smarter than some of them. I mean, let's think back to the words of this. What was his name? The congressman, or Walberg.
Walberg.
He was like, "Well, China and North Korea are probably in there too." I'm like, "Wait, what? What are you talking about? Where do you even get this from?" Same with Fetterman. I mean, a lot of these guys are either low information or they are highly selective information in terms of what they take in. They have no challenges. Their staff usually either afraid or just going to bubble up whatever they want. If you've ever been in the Senate, for people who, or even in Congress, like you can create your own little reality in that world. Like once you've been elected. So this is just a good view into kind of the boomer brain and how it can work. And I guess in Fetterman's case too, about how if you want, you can create an entire, information sphere that works exactly the way that you want. So anyway,
yeah,
it is interesting.
Apparently. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.